For joining us this month for our monthly meeting. We have Candice Wendt and Mike Snader that will be talking about recent trends in incident response. And Candice and Mike, if you'd like to take it over and kind of give us a little introduction and on with your presentation.
Absolutely, absolutely. So my name is Candice Wendt. I'm a director here with our incident response team at Kivu Consulting. And on with me, I do have Ryan Baisley, who's one of our client executives, as well as Mike Snader, who is the director of our SETI team, Counter Extortion and Threat Intelligence. So we're here to tell you kind of what we're starting to see or what we've seen recently in incident response and kind of go through what we see for threat communications as well as threat actors and of course our typical client with regards to incident response. So let's get started. And Mike, I think you have the first slides. So let's talk about ransomware.
And if I happen to lose you guys, it seems like my connection keeps going in and out or volume keeps going on and off. All right, so we throw this in there and more of a discussion point because all these numbers are great, but there's so many variables in what we do. So if we say the average negotiating time is 9 days, that's if someone's active in negotiations. A lot of times when we have ransoms, we'll intentionally stall the negotiation to allow businesses, continuity issues of being able to wow, it's been a long day. Being able to restore while we're messing around with how much we're going to pay or not pay. Same thing, average Bitcoin and all these numbers, again, are very variable because sometimes payment is made in 24. We've made payments 4 hours after a demand, and that skews those numbers as opposed to someone who can actively negotiate for weeks and weeks and weeks. So it's like the numbers are there, but at the same time, there seems to be some inconsistencies with it. But on the average, I'd say we're in this range for a typical client. Same thing with the ransom dollars. It just depends on each business, the size of the business, the variant of the ransom. But that $240,000 at the bottom is fairly accurate as well. Certain variants are a whole lot more and certain variants are a whole lot less. It's my favorite slide. Thanks, Candice and Ryan.
All right, we'll move on from your favorite slide.
So this is just a snapshot from one of our Intel resources. It basically moving left to right. It tells you the industries and basically a percentage of the industries that get hit. The little pie charts, fairly, it's pretty accurate. Those are public ransoms, and when I say public, those are ones that have gone public. Either the victim, the client made them public, or the bad guy published making it public. And those are the numbers you see over there. The map is very telling. That's just a little snapshot of Europe, obviously. You see all the places that aren't colored aren't getting any ransomware cases. And when we're negotiating, we call it Kiev time for a reason. And if you just look on the eastern side there's just no ransoms in Eastern Europe. So most of them are coming from there and they won't hit their own people. On the right side, those are some of the bigger players in ransomware. On the right side of that chart, Lockbit, Conti are the ones we're seeing heavy now. Black Matter's scooting up, and if you guys are familiar at all with the news, Black Matter is an offshoot of DarkSide. DarkSide's the one that did Colonial Pipeline. So Black Matter's only been in the market about a month and a half, and they're accounting for about 1% of what's going on now. But we have several cases with them, so that 1% number is going to jump as soon as they start publishing more of their clients. Their ransoms are very expensive. Conti's what we're probably seeing the most right now. Candice and I were just on another call and she was kind of joking. It's like, when are you not on Conti's site? And the answer is we're on it pretty much all day long. So the numbers you see over there kind of go with what we showed in the first slide. And these are just Conti specific to us. And keep in mind that same continuity issue comes into play. So 13 days is an average. I have one that's in the 50-day range right about now. And that's because it's a fairly big client and they're restoring and they're on a bunch of different continents. And it's a pretty complicated matter. We settled one with Conti in less than 24 hours about a week ago. And it was right along that line of that 658,000 you see in the average US dollars. Those are just numbers on a spreadsheet, but pretty telling. It's not a good day if you get a Conti ransom. I think you can, yeah, thanks. This is a little snippet of how they communicate. Conti has its own portal on a Tor browser. The blue is us responding. You can see that they wanted $500,000 to start with. You can see the blue link on there. So they don't mess around. They will publish your data. They send you a proof pack right away. That's that blue link, and that had a lot of really personal data, a bunch of non-disclosures, a bunch of spreadsheets, just very, very typical little snapshot of what Conti does right there. This is Conti's news portal, and this is how they start to publish the data. So they have this very public, they encourage the media, and I use air quotes on media because that's anybody with a keyboard is considered media. So there's a bunch of bloggers that will go to this site all the time. So when they publish, they go up in this fashion. If that was a full screenshot, it would go down and it would tell you the percentage of documents that they took that were published. So none of these are our cases up here. These are all other victims. But if it goes down, it'll say 10% and the day it's published, and it gives you a link to go to if you're interested in buying it. And then the other thing they do is, and this is on our Intel resources, they're collecting all this data, and there's these marketplaces on the dark web that bad guys go to. I use the analogy all the time. It's like somebody uses heroin, because victims always ask us, how do people know where to go to buy the data? And that's that analogy of the dope house, where the heroin user always knows where to go to find dope. It's just the way it is.
I think Sotonokobi had a auction site on theirs, didn't they?
I didn't hear the first part, Candice.
The Sotonokobi doxing site, didn't they have like what they called the happy auction, and they would auction off data from their clients?
Yeah, they would certainly do that.
Yeah, although I never really saw. Oops, sorry.
The other argument is these guys are leaking data before they put it on their site. So Conti is pretty good at doing that. And one of our Intel resources that we pay for, it's a very expensive resource. They have several 100,000 bots that troll the dark web, and they're looking at all these blogs and all these marketplaces. And as soon as the client's name comes into it, we get the alert. So we're seeing stuff leaked before the expiration or before they physically publish or publicly publish what's going on. They're criminals. Just it's organized crime.
Is it illegal to purchase this information?
Well, it depends where you are and what you're buying. So yeah, I mean, in theory it is, but I mean, you're buying contraband. So yes, and they're selling stolen merchandise. So yes, it's illegal.
Okay.
Would you ever be prosecuted? I haven't seen it happen yet. It's a good question. That's the first time somebody's asked that.
Yeah.
So the next slide up is just kind of how we operate, kind of this series of events that take place from the first contact. We ask for the proof of decryption. You can see Conti just gives it to you. Once we're into the negotiations and we settle on some price, then we'll ask for proof of life. We'll send them back a decrypted file and ask them to decrypt it, a couple files usually. And they're usually very, very small files. We don't want them, they're not going to decrypt a database or anything for free, but some innocuous file, they'll send that back decrypted. Then we run the legal part of this. So OFAC, the Office of Foreign Asset Control, is part of the Treasury Department. We run through a series of checks on that because it's illegal to pay sanctioned bad guys. And the analogy I use is it's basically a no-fly list for making payments. So we won't pay anybody that the government says we can't pay. And then we'll make the payment. We'll get the decryption key. We send the decryption key over to a different work group at Kivu. They'll test it to make sure it's not containing more malware. And then we shoot it back to our victim to use for decryption. These are just factors into pay or not pay. I'm former law enforcement. I'm going to advise everybody, if you don't have to pay, don't pay. If you're paying to keep your business afloat, that's a whole different story. If you're paying to keep documents from being released, I think it's a fool's errand to make a payment. But everybody has a different approach to that. Everybody has different reasoning. People don't want their stuff published. You really can't prevent it from being published once they have it. So it goes back to, did the company do everything they could? Are they using best practices? So do they have viable backups? It seems like most of our cases, our backups get contaminated, get encrypted. We have one now where Conti actually told us that the backups were inadvertently destroyed, and they still want $4 million. So then you go back to, was data exfiltrated? Some of the variants just lock you up. Some of them, the majority of them lock you up and steal data. That's just the way it works. And the question is, what data was stolen? And you can see, do you have the need for the decryption tool? So if you gotta have the decryption tool, then we get into the negotiations a little bit more. Is it faster to decrypt or restore? It becomes a financial question. So if you pay for decryption, does that decryption cost you less than the people power it takes to restore your stuff and time-wise? So a lot of times you get some really, really large industry and they're losing millions of dollars a minute. And now they can pay $5 million for a key and they're going to do it. If you think about a huge pharmaceutical company and they're running a huge dose of some medication and they get locked up, they lose that dosage, and that could be it's really critical to life. So they're going to pay ransoms really fast. Healthcare and food seem to be what they're going after in today's world. And there's actually an article that came out today on a couple different resources saying food chain's going to get affected by ransomware.
Yeah, and one of the questions that I think we get quite often is like, how can you be sure that they will actually delete your data? And have you had any clients get posted after payment is made? And it doesn't happen often, but that definitely has happened, even with larger variants. So there's always no guarantee. Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, she is absolutely spot on. And the question is, they may show you a deletion tree. We've had bad guys send us video of them deleting files. The obvious question is, nobody knows what they did with it before they showed you the video of them deleting it. So it could be copied out, could be sold out long before. Without all the lawyers involved, I should say, with all the lawyers involved, they're going to tell the client right away that as soon as you're exposed, you're exposed. Paying the ransom does not mitigate that exposure legally. It might mitigate some civil lawsuits. It might do that, but at the same time, if your data is exposed, there's not much you can do about it. We've had clients debate about paying to keep things private, and it's the same argument every day. It comes down to, you're going to have some clients that are going to be unhappy. Let's just say you're a car dealer you're going to have some clients that are unhappy that you didn't pay to protect their data, and you're going to have other clients that are going to be happy that you did pay to protect their data. Just like it's a no-win either way.
All right. So does anyone have any questions about kind of the ransomware threat negotiations, threat actors, et cetera, before we move on? No? Okay. So let's talk about incident response for a bit, and kind of what we're still seeing actually kind of in all of these cases that we receive. A lot of them, especially the ransomware cases, follow pretty much the same suit as we've been seeing, over the years, where phishing and weak security posture play a huge role in how these threat actors gain access to the environment. That hasn't changed. I don't know that if that will ever change. But another thing that we're seeing, especially this year, is an uptick in those 0 days in the supply chain attacks, things like that, that really there's no defense against. So, with the Kaseya attack and the Exchange server vulnerability that was found in March, like we've had a lot of clients that were affected by these 0 days and the supply chain attacks that they really, they were blindsided for sure. And if you don't have that really strong security posture, if you don't have hardened security, you're going to get affected by those types of attacks all the time, 100% of the time. So we definitely, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later down the line, but we definitely push our clients to strengthen their security posture after the event and after we remediate, and even during remediation, actually. So typically, overall, the majority are, unmonitored or low maintenance environments where, they've got old servers or, unpatched systems that are easy to exploit. Phishing is still a very, very, very large tool that threat actors use. So making sure that your employees know what a phishing email looks like definitely does come in handy there. So what we're seeing in our current cases now, at least this year and last year, is that it's not really a drive-by situation, especially with the trend of exfiltrating data. What we start to see now is, instead of a threat actor compromising an endpoint, getting in, escalating, and deploying ransomware, we'll see them in the environment for many, many, many months. Sometimes it'll be a few days, sometimes it'll be a few weeks, sometimes it's upwards of 6 months where they're in the environment, they're conducting reconnaissance, mapping out the network, escalating to a point where they can start to exfiltrate data. We have had clients where about less than a gigabyte has been exfiltrated, and we have had clients where more than 6 terabytes were exfiltrated. So there really is no rule here with how long there will be in your, there would be in your environment. It's really as long as you let them. And a lot of our clients that come to us don't have the tools in place to stop that type of, activity. So, all throughout these months, the threat actor is moving throughout their environment, looking through all their files, picking and choosing which ones are important, stealing that data and exfiltrating it through Megasync or rClone or off to their foreign servers, and executing the ransomware is usually the last step that we'll see. We definitely have seen an uptick in the ransom amounts. 3-4 years ago, you wouldn't see $1 million ransom demand, and that's fairly commonplace nowadays. And so there's definitely been investment and improvement on the threat actor side of the tools that they're using, the groups that they are associating with, just the server environments that they have, all improved in quality. Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are some threat actor groups out there that use call centers. They outsource their call center work to deal with victims on a day-to-day basis. So you'll have a call center that's basically taking in calls, quote unquote, support calls from victims and doing the negotiations and
They
things like that.
absolutely, they absolutely have the call centers, and they absolutely franchise their business out. So
Right.
there's all kinds of levels in the marketing world of ransomware.
Right. And so similar to a software as a service, you'll see ransomware as a service platforms where a group will develop the tools and the platform necessary to conduct a ransomware attack. And affiliates will buy the right to use those tools. And so with DarkSide and with Sotonoka being our evil and Conti, the Conti team will develop a tool set and a platform and basically rent it out to 100 different groups who will conduct their own attacks and use the Conti platform to conduct their negotiations. So that's become very commonplace. You'll see a lot of these groups do something very similar to each other, and they compete with each other, and they share affiliates. So it's become quite a big business. So one of the questions that we get asked all the time is, how can we prevent any of this from happening? The short answer is that you really can't. I mean, at this point in the threat landscape, it's not a matter of, if you will get attacked. It's more of a matter of when. The tools that they're developing, the technology that they're using, it's all very sophisticated. And, with things like zero-day vulnerabilities, there really isn't anything you can do to protect that. So one of the big failures that we see our clients have is that they have no idea what to do in the event of a ransomware attack or a security incident that takes down their network. And oftentimes it's panic. And so they start immediately pulling the plug on everything. They start wiping everything. They start immediately restoring. There's no thought into how to protect their new environment or anything like that. So we have clients who have panicked and wiped everything, restored everything, and then we're hit again because they have no idea how they got in. They did not put any defenses in place. So it's very, very similar to a fire drill and how you have a plan in place, you know what to do. Everybody has a task. And when it happens, everyone knows where their place is and what they need to do. So that disaster recovery and incident response plan is really critical when it comes to what to do when there's an event, so no one makes, or it minimizes the chance of people making mistakes. Another thing that we often see is, and one of the questions that we ask up front is, what sensitive data does your company have? And a lot of times, the CEOs, CFOs, people in the organization have no idea. They don't know that the HR department is storing social security numbers on a server, or they don't know that, client sensitive data is being stored in a department share. These are the types of data that the threat actor will go for. So if you can secure that data and limit who accesses that data, you're at a better standpoint when an attack does happen. Obviously, I don't think the third bullet point of ongoing security awareness is ever going to go away. The end user is always the weakest link. Everybody knows that in the security field. So phishing, what to do, how to spot a phishing email, how to check to make sure links are valid. Those things are surprisingly not known by a lot of our clients. So, they're very confused when we tell them that, oh yeah, John Smith clicked on this link. Well, why did he do that? Well, he received a phishing link. It looks legitimate. If he had looked at the link, he would have seen that it wasn't going to Dropbox or whatever. It was actually going to here, but it's normal and it happens, and you should train your users to do it. Another thing that we've run into is that the end users, when they see that their machine has been affected by ransomware, they don't know what to do. They don't know that it's something that's, critically wrong, or it could affect someone outside of their little bubble. So, we've had cases where, oh yeah, we discovered the event on Friday, but one of their employees noticed that something looked funky on her machine on Wednesday. So that time is critical, and that training is absolutely critical. And another thing that we see in these ransom events too is that the admin accounts are the target for these threat actors. So having, when we have clients that have like 50 admin accounts, 25 of them are for departed employees or employees that have left the company and they just didn't shut it down. They don't have, any sort of password policy that's really secure. Or they, quite the opposite, they have one admin account for everybody. So those types of situations, those accounts are easily compromised, and full access is granted to the threat actor as soon as it is. So enabling MFA and things like that whenever possible, limiting the amount of admin accounts, knowing what all your service accounts that you've created are used for, and making sure that they're only used for those purposes. So these are kind of the big ticket items that we see our clients make mistakes on. And so we definitely like to bring them up here so we can learn from those mistakes. Okay, so I did a lot of talking. Does anyone have any questions?
Candice, I'm going to throw out a question because I think oftentimes, when I was working in tech and legal, we had our IRP, and I thought, if something bad happens, we pull out the IRP and we just kind of go. How, and from experience, I feel like that's often not the case now. How is a company like Kivu typically engaged, and what is the process?
You mean like as far as like when we're pulled in?
Yeah, the whole, going through cyber insurance, breach coach.
Absolutely. So I would say we're engaged in a variety of ways, the majority being coming from clients who have engaged a breach coach and their insurance carrier. So if you do have a cyber policy, your first call should be to your insurer to determine who is on their panel, what is your coverage, and that will determine who you reach out to. Your second call should be through a breach coach. And they are a data privacy attorney that deals with situations like these and will help you make decisions as you go through this process. They will help you with notifications and any legal requirements you may have. And then their third call should be through to an incident response vendor like Kivu, who is basically brought in by your breach coach so that all communications are protected under privacy. We do have some clients that don't follow that route. We do have clients that come to us directly and don't or decline any sort of breach coach or data privacy. We don't recommend that only because of said privileged communications, anything that we find is discoverable. So if we do find, for example, proof of exfiltration, that will not be housed under any privilege, and a subpoena coming to Kivu can garner that information. So we definitely recommend, if you are in an incident, go through a breach coach. They will protect all of your communications, and they will also make sure that your policy and your actions are in line with your policy coverage, and who you hire is in line with your policy as well. Does anyone else have any questions?
Hi there, this is Jason Parker. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, I'm glad you can hear me. So I got a couple questions for you, actually. The first one, it's scary you saying it's not if it's going to happen, but when. But is there anybody like from the government or anybody doing anything offensive to try to stop these guys from starting the attacks in the first place at all?
I don't know if I would ever be privy to that information, but Mike, maybe you might know. To my knowledge,
I wouldn't say offensive. It's
No.
always proactive. They have, and I say they, it's, so let's just go with dark side and the Colonial Pipeline case. So
Mhm.
reactively, they have seized some of the money that went to dark side, and that's only because some people made some mistakes during the cryptocurrency transaction. And the FBI has identified who's done it, but they can't touch them based on where they're located. I guarantee it's a very big discussion at the Department of Justice, but it's such a wide topic. It's like a war on drugs kind of thing. It's like, where do you start? And how do you know? All you can do is take little pieces of it at a time. Now, you might see something along that line legislatively. There's all kinds of talk about making ransom payments illegal, and that would definitely change the course of business. But at the end of the day, cryptocurrency isn't legislated in any one country right now. It's actually a national, like Bitcoin's a national currency in El Salvador.
Mhm.
So it's, if anything, cryptocurrency is getting bigger. But until they legislate it and figure out a way to follow the money, it's a very hard proposition.
It's
Good question,
kind of
though.
scary that it's that massive that we just kind of take it on the chin like that. The other question is, you'd mentioned, know how to spot the malware. And just curious, are they like hiding this in common file names, or the hash is searchable, or is there any way of identifying it that kind of stands
Yeah.
out?
Yeah, so I think really what I think as far as the end user should be concerned is identifying when a security event may have occurred. So if they see, for example, that their files that they normally access suddenly don't work, or if, random pop-ups on their computer are coming up, or someone is asking for remote access to their computer, those types of things, you know, are easy to miss. It doesn't seem so to security practitioners and technical people, but for the everyday employee, someone asking for access to their computer named administrator or IT could be completely normal or seemingly normal. So teaching your users to identify, when something looks suspicious. We've had clients where they're like, yeah, all of my files stopped working, and they started getting like these weird names, but we didn't think anything of it. Well, they were being encrypted, like right in front of their eyes, and they never reported it or anything.
Oh
So
my,
valuable time was lost in that sense. And then of course, that's just for detection. Like, let's say you come to your computer and everything's encrypted, or you see some activity that's suspicious. What do you do? For someone who is not technically savvy, or someone who's not around computers very often, turning it off or wiping it, or throwing it against the wall, or whatever your reaction is, you want to make sure that that's a good reaction and that falls in line with your incident response plan. So definitely making users aware, educating your users to show them, like, look, this is not right. Like, you should not see someone trying to log into your account, or you shouldn't see encrypted files on your desktop. A huge one that we see is when a phish is successful and the client environment has MFA enabled, the threat actor will just spam the two-factor authentication. So you'll get alerts on your phone like, oh, someone's trying to log in, oh, someone's trying to log in, over and over and over again. And you'd be surprised at how many people will just be like, oh, stop bothering me. Okay, just click yes. It happens all the time in our line of work. So those security defenses are only as good as the end user.
And some people do it inadvertently. If all you have to do is show your face to your phone to do your two-factor, I mean, some people just, like, oh, wait a minute, and then it's too late, or a fingerprint or whatever it is, if you're not actually entering a code.
Exactly. So, we see those types of mistakes. Of course, we're a little biased. We only see those that have made those mistakes. But that is definitely one of the. I just got off a call a couple hours ago with a business email compromise case where that exact thing happened. A user got phished and they gave up their password, but they had multi-factor authentication, and the threat actor just spammed him until he clicked yes, which he did eventually. So it's very, very commonplace. And teaching your users how to identify it, but also what to do once they do identify it. Give them a plan. Tell them who to contact if they're having technical difficulties or if they suspect that something suspicious is going on. You'd rather have an overreactive, employee base that's security conscious than an underreactive one that just lets everything through.
So are these criminal organizations antagonistic towards each other?
I would say
they compete with each other. So if you picture two, just go back to your whatever mafia movies you used to watch back in the day. You have two competing crime families. They usually don't compete against each other in the same neighborhood.
Right.
They usually don't. And they usually have meetings between the two to make sure that the boundaries are set and the leaders know who the leaders are. So
And it seems to me that this is enough of still an emerging financial opportunity for them that there's so much more green space. It's easier just to go find a different person to attack than attack somebody who could potentially attack you back.
Well, we have a client now that got hit by DarkSide, and then they just got hit by Conti in the last 6 months. So my assumption is that they know, the leaders know each other. The other part that happens regularly is they break up all the time. One little group gets pissy at the other group and they start their own little band of brothers, if you will. And
so is it better to think of them as like corporations, or is it better to think of them as like crime families? Because I mean, they really seem like they're run like a business.
So I'm just telling you, coming out of the law enforcement world where I worked organized crime cases for a long time, the big boys operate like organized crime and the little guys operate like a street gang.
Okay.
So like there's a group called Phobos. They break up all the time in Faction and Splinter, and they'll have lower ransoms. They'll be like 50 grand or even as low as $5,000, but they're going to want that 4 or 5 times. They're the ones you pay and they don't send a decryptor. Where if you're dealing with Conti or Black Matter, the new DarkSide, they're going to want, upwards in the millions of dollars, but their stuff's going to work. They're going to decrypt 90 whatever percent of your data. It's going to happen fairly seamlessly. They'll even offer product support for 48 or 72 hours after you pay. It's a big business for them.
Does anyone have any other questions?
Nope. Going once. Oh, go ahead.
Have you ever, I'm not sure even how to ask this, but have you ever had a client that has either thought about it or successfully or just what the idea of retaliating against? Because it reminds me that there was a movie years ago with Mel Gibson called Ransomware. He basically doubled, he said, I don't remember the details, but like I think his son was kidnapped, and he basically offered a reward for double the ransom that the kidnapper was asking for the safe return of his son, with the kidnapper dead or alive. So is there a way you can turn the tables on these ransomware people, so it's like they'll just say, oh, here are your files back, we'll just leave you alone? Is there any, I don't know, is that possible? Or has anybody given that some thought? What are your thoughts on that?
We get that question a lot, actually, along with the comment of, can I just take that money? I'd rather just take the ransom that they're demanding and use that money to go find these guys.
Yeah. There's got to be some consequences. I mean, it'd be awesome if there was a high profile case where somebody was stopped and punished. And it's like, look, this is what we do to ransomware. People who do this cause misery to so many people and financial loss, you know, as a deterrent. But I don't know if that would be effective. Anyway, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Right. No, it's definitely a common question that we get. Hacking any entity or, you know, retaliating in the way that they'd like us to is illegal. So we would not be able to do that. The only way to really stop them would be through law enforcement. And I have seen in some cases, and you know, it did make news, especially with the Colonial Pipeline and DarkSide going down. The Kaseya attack took Sotonokopi down. So, you know, law enforcement does get involved in that reactive way that Mike said. But the short answer is no. You know, once you've been hit, there's really nothing we can do legally. Most of that type of action needs to be done through the government.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
Just,
I know.
just keep in mind, if you access their network, you're committing a crime as well.
Yeah, it's always the one. It's like in the schoolyard, you know, the kid that punches back is the one who gets in trouble.
Right,
Yeah, and it's-
exactly.
The best precaution is a good layered defense.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
have a plan once it happens.
yeah.
We've had cases where, you know, governments have been involved just due to the nature of the data that may have been taken. And in those cases, there seems to be, you know, some power that is held depending on, you know, the data and the sensitivity of the data. So it does happen, but not for the standard client, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions?
I think I might actually have a question. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Fantastic. My name is Philip. I'm very new to this group. I literally just got this link from a friend today, but I did want to hear this, and I'm glad that I did. The question is, we say that it's not when, or not if, but when a breach or something does happen. Do you envision, or can you see any way, or at any point we might get to where that wouldn't be the case, where we might actually be able to defend any type of attack or any type of threat actor at any time? Do you think that that's possible, or what would your thoughts be on that?
I don't think we'll ever get to 100%, but you can get pretty darn close now with the current tools on the market, you know, putting the right tools in place, like a really good EDR platform that has a behavioral AI goes a very long way above the traditional antivirus. So there are definite tools in place, you know, SIMs that aggregate log data that you can have SOCs analyze for malicious activity or conduct threat hunting throughout the environment to see who may have clicked on a phishing link or things like that. So there are tools in place that are tools today that can assist with that really strong security posture that will stop most of these attacks that we're talking about now. Kivu does offer, for example, an instance of CrowdStrike that we have our SOC monitor 24/7 for our clients as they start to restore and come back from, you know, a ransomware attack, for example. And as they're starting to restore and they're putting our tools on their devices, you know, if something dormant is there, if there's persistence or the threat actor has provided a backdoor into the environment, which is very, very, very common. As they're starting to pick it up, as they're starting to bring things back online, the threat actor will make a connection and start executing software. CrowdStrike will immediately shut it down. So that concept kind of goes across the board. Having the right tools in place today, you know, can prevent and does often prevent these events from occurring. Now, it doesn't stop them from gaining access, right? Like an EDR tool won't guard your firewall, for example. But if someone were to get through the door, it will stop them immediately. So while there's no security, tool or suite of tools that is 100% guaranteed effective, you can get pretty darn close to that.
Very cool. Well, thank you very much for answering the question, and thank you for your time.
Not a problem. Does anyone else have any other questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you very much for having us on. If you have any questions or concerns, or if you need any assistance in any way, please feel free to reach out. It's a brave new world out there for sure.
Well, thank you, Candice and Mike. That was great. That was very informative, and I took notes and everything. So thank you for taking your time to present that to us. And I think we had some good questions as well. So thank you, participants, for reaching out to them and asking them questions. We really appreciate you all for presenting today. Next month is our National Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So we would like to have a panel discussion for people wanting to go into the cybersecurity or information security field. So we'll be advertising that soon. If your company is having a public event, please let us know so we can advertise for you and just let the community know, and people in our organization know that they can participate with. Columbus State will be having a paper shredding event on October 9th from 9 to 12. So if you have, old bills or taxes and all that stuff that you want to, have, you want to shred, you don't want to be in front of your paper shredder all day, you can bring it in and we do it in bulk. So that's October 9th. So anybody else have anything, you can email communications@columbus.issa.org. So I thank y'all for attending. And once again, we thank Candice and Mike for your presentation.
Thank you, everyone.
Are there any questions? Thank you.
Oh, Jonathan, did you mean to put your hand up?
That's applause.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much for having us.
Yes,
That was
thank
great.
you.
Thank you so much.